Whimsyville, a town where normal took a holiday. Maurice McGuffin, our hero, was no stranger to its eccentricities. He sat on a bench watching a squirrel in a tiny top hat juggle acorns. "Morning, Maurice!" boomed Mayor Bartholomew, riding a unicycle, juggling rubber chickens. "Talent show tonight. You entering?" Maurice chuckled. "Mayor, you know I can barely boil an egg." This was true. Maurice's culinary skills were legendary for all the wrong reasons. Whimsyville was a kaleidoscope of crazy. Houses were painted in polka dots and stripes. Gardens sprouted singing flowers. The town was a living cartoon, and Maurice loved every minute of it. His life, however, was about to get a whole lot more whimsical.
The aroma of burnt toast wafted through my kitchen. I surveyed the scene. The toaster was smoking, the egg yolks were rock hard, and the orange juice had mysteriously turned green. "Blast it!" I exclaimed, staring at the green juice.
"Morning, Maurice," she chirped, her eyes twinkling like the Christmas lights she refused to take down. "Want to practice our duet for the talent show?"
Maurice was smitten with Delilah, but so was Reginald, the town's resident poet and mime. The situation was a recipe for disaster, much like Maurice's breakfast. He sighed, "Delilah," about the talent show. He was interrupted by a loud honking. It was Reginald, in a tiny clown car, juggling invisible bowling pins. This was going to be a long day.
Reginald leaped out of his clown car, striking a dramatic pose. "Delilah, my muse," he declared, his voice dripping with melodrama. "Ready to rehearse our award-winning mime act?"
"Oh, Reginald, you're such a card." Maurice felt a pang of jealousy. He knew he had to do something, but what? He couldn't compete with Reginald's theatrics.
As if reading his mind, Delilah turned to him. "Maurice, why don't you join us? You could be the narrator."
"I'd rather wrestle a bear."
The love triangle was a tangled mess, much like the Christmas lights that still adorned Delilah's house. And as the day wore on, it seemed the only talent Maurice had was attracting chaos.
The Whimsyville Town Hall was buzzing with excitement. The annual talent show was the highlight of the social calendar. The stage was set, the audience was ready, and the air crackled with anticipation. I stood backstage, feeling like a fish out of water.
He watched as Mrs. Periwinkle, the town librarian, performed an interpretive dance with a flock of trained pigeons.
Next up was Reginald and Delilah's mime act. Their performance was a whirlwind of silent drama, invisible props, and exaggerated emotions. The audience was enthralled. Then, disaster struck. In the midst of a particularly dramatic scene, Reginald tripped over an invisible rope and crashed into the scenery.
The backdrop, a whimsical depiction of the Whimsyville skyline, teetered precariously before collapsing onto the stage. The audience gasped. Delilah shrieked. I knew I had to do something. This was my chance to be a hero, even if I couldn't boil an egg. "Don't panic, it's all part of the act. The sun is angry, very angry."
Thinking fast, Maurice leaped onto the stage. He grabbed a fallen piece of the backdrop, a giant painted sun, and held it aloft. The audience, ever receptive to the absurd, erupted in applause.
"The show must go on?"
Reginald, dazed but unharmed, crawled out from under the wreckage. Delilah, still clutching an invisible bouquet, stared at Maurice in disbelief. He winked at her, and with that, he launched into an impromptu song about an angry sun, using the giant prop as a makeshift guitar.
"Oh, the sun, it's so angry today."
His voice was terrible, his lyrics nonsensical, but the audience loved it. He even incorporated Reginald and Delilah into his act, assigning them roles as sunbeams. The chaos transformed into a bizarre, hilarious performance. By the time the curtain fell, the talent show had become legendary. And Maurice, the man who couldn't boil an egg, had become the accidental hero of Whimsyville.
"You were amazing up there. Who knew you had such a flair for the dramatic?"
It was nothing really, just a bit of quick thinking. Maurice, you don't have to say anything. I think I'm starting to understand the charm of chaos. S1. Delilah,
Later that night, under the twinkling lights of the town square, which was inexplicably decorated like a circus tent, Maurice sat with Delilah. Reginald had disappeared, presumably to write a tragicomic poem about his theatrical demise. At that moment, Maurice realized something important. Whimsyville wasn't just a town, it was a state of mind. And in the midst of the chaos, he had found something real, something genuine, something that made his heart sing. The next morning, Maurice woke up feeling lighter than a feather on a windy day. He strolled down Main Street, greeting his fellow Whimsyvillians. Mrs. Periwinkle was teaching her pigeons to roller skate. Mayor Bartholomew was attempting to ride a unicycle on a tightrope strung between two lampposts. Life was good. He stopped by Delilah's house, which was now decorated for Valentine's Day, despite it being May. They sat on her porch, watching a squirrel in a tiny tuxedo conduct an orchestra of crickets. He took a sip of his hot chocolate. It tasted surprisingly normal. Perhaps some things were best left unwhimsified. But as he glanced at Delilah, her eyes sparkling with laughter, he knew that in Whimsyville, even normal had a way of becoming extraordinary. Here, here to Whimsyville, may it always be wonderfully weird.
Break a leg, my love, but please try not to set the stage on fire this time.
A year had passed since the legendary talent show. Maurice and Delilah were happily married, living in a polka-dot house with a garden full of singing sunflowers. Reginald had found a new muse, a mime who specialized in invisible trapeze acts. The annual talent show was approaching, and this year, Maurice was the star attraction. He had been practicing his act, a musical comedy about a man who falls in love with a woman who talks to squirrels. He was nervous but excited. As he stood backstage waiting for his cue, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Delilah, her eyes twinkling like the stars over Whimsyville. Maurice grinned. He took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. The chaos was about to begin, and in the heart of Whimsyville, under the big top of the endless sky, Maurice McGuffin, the man who couldn't boil an egg, found his own unique brand of happiness. S2, no promises. So, you're thinking of visiting Whimsyville? Excellent choice. But be warned, this isn't your average town. Here's what you need to know. 1. Embrace the absurd. In Whimsyville, the impossible is just another Tuesday. Don't be surprised if you see a cat walking a dog or a fish riding a bicycle. 2. Pack your sense of humor. You're going to need it. Whimsyville is a town that laughs at itself, and you should too. 3. Don't try to make sense of it. Just go with the flow. 4. Be prepared for anything. And we mean anything. 5. Most importantly, have fun. Whimsyville is a place where anything is possible, and every day is an adventure. Welcome to Whimsyville. Enjoy the chaos.